Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Catholic Education Foundation podcast, our first podcast of 2025. This will be the first podcast of our third season and podcast number 37. This podcast will feature Diane Gahafer, the Chief Commercial Officer at Louisville-based Pathfinder Sustainability Data and Foundation Board Security. It's a mouthful there, Diane. And then Rich Lecklider, the President of the Catholic Education Foundation of Louisville. How are we both doing?
Happy New Year. Good.
Great. Happy New Year. Rich, before we get into this, I do want to go over a couple of things that I think our listeners will appreciate. We found out actually today that our podcast ranks in the top 50% of all podcasts in the United States.
Wow.
Pretty cool.
Top half. That's
Top
awesome.
half. Our most popular city is Louisville, followed Louisville, Kentucky, which makes sense because that's kind of home base for us.
Right.
But Indianapolis, Indiana, Los Angeles, California, we get a lot of listens.
Really?
And then we have a huge listenership in Germany.
Interesting.
Yeah.
As well as 16 other countries, so pretty good.
Lecklider Gahafer. Yeah, that's a German connection.
There you go.
Was that supposed to add some pressure? Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just saying. We got a lot of listeners here. So, Dan, it's so good to have you on the show. You have lots of connections with Louisville's Catholic community and Catholic education. But let's start from the beginning. You're part of a large St. Rita family. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, I am. I'm the youngest of 7 children. Went to St. Rita grade school. We were very much a part of that parish. I'm the youngest of 7, but my closest sibling is 9 years older than me. So there were 6 really close together, and then I was the baby. So we moved back to Louisville. My dad was a naval aviator. They moved a lot around the country. We moved back to Louisville in 1977 and joined St. Rita Parish.
Okay.
So I was able to attend all 8 years there. Some of my siblings went for a few years here and there. But, you know, I love St. Rita. It was very much a part of our family, an extension of our family. We were very active at that parish. It was a large parish at that time and remains so, thanks to the Catholic Education Foundation.
Absolutely. Rich, we talk about St. Rita all the time. Obviously, it's a foundation favorite. Obviously, St. Rita has benefited enormously from the works of the foundation. Tell us a little about that.
Yeah, we're in our 10th year at St. Rita in a very big way. That was probably the first school I went to when I started the foundation, and things were sort of heading south at the time. And you know, we just decided Neil Holsweed was the new principal, who's still there today.
And Neil's a rock star.
Yeah, one of the best. And Father Joe was the pastor, and we just kind of got together and said, you know, we got to do something different.
Sure.
And that's sort of when we spawned The Answer is Yes as our little motto or tagline. And we sort of went out there and forced to St. Rita. We went to the Spanish masses and spoke. We did a ton of...
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. You guys would get up in front of the Mass, at the end of Mass, and say, listen, if anybody here wants a Catholic education, we're here to help.
Yeah, we just made a kind of a wide open offer. So if your kid wants to be a reader, we're going to make it happen.
Got it.
And, you know, back then, there were very few Hispanic kids in the school.
Oh, yeah.
I would say, I think there were 190 kids. 10 of them were Hispanic, perhaps. And then there was this sort of cultural barrier there that existed. And I learned this later because most of the folks that were part of that Hispanic community, many of them were first-time Americans. Many of them were from Mexico or Ecuador or Guatemala. And sort of the Catholic tradition in those countries was that Catholic schools were available to those who were wealthy.
Right.
So they didn't really feel like they belonged or were welcome anyway.
Sure.
So we had to kind of break down that, what I'll call cultural barrier.
Yeah.
And today, it's our number 1 funded school.
Yeah.
It's over $600,000 a year. There's 262 kids in the school, half of which are not white. And if you go to that school, and you've been there with us to visit recently, it's booming.
Yeah.
And things are things have really taken off. And again, all due credit to Neil Allsweed and his team for what they've done to make that happen.
But how important it is to keep that school open in that community,
Mm-hmm.
and I just I really do have a love for it. And as Rich said, I was able to attend a half day, including a school mass. And I was so moved by the enthusiasm and the charisma and the participation of the kids at that. They had a children's choir. There were a lot of parents at the mass.
Sure.
It was an awesome thing to see and be a part of.
We've highlighted some of the kids that have come out of St. Rita who are doing awesome now. Valentina's one of them. She's going to be the next person designing the cars we drive. I mean, it's just crazy the amount of talent they're even producing coming out of that school. It's pretty exciting stuff.
It really is. And a lot more of the kids over the last several years, I'd say 5 years, a lot more of the 8th graders coming out of St. Rita are wanting to go to Catholic high schools, which is a challenge.
Right.
But along with our high school partners, we're making that happen for them as well. So that's exciting too.
Okay, Diane. So following St. Rita, you went to Assumption High School.
I did.
Go Rockets.
Why Assumption?
Coming from the South End, I wasn't really sure where I wanted to go. And from the moment I stepped foot in Assumption, I knew the fit was right.
Okay.
I think I was one of 3
Okay.
students from Rita that went to Assumption. And so I didn't know a lot of people going in. But I really felt like the culture there was for me. I was very much attracted to the academics. This was in the early 90s, and Assumption was one of the first schools to offer block scheduling, great academics, great extracurricular activities. It felt like home from the moment I walked in. So I had a wonderful experience there.
So you've been very active at Assumption for years. Talk a bit about that and the progress that has been made there at Assumption.
Sure. So while I was there, without sounding too trite, I knew that Assumption was changing my life. It was giving me opportunities.
When you were there, you could feel it.
I did. Yeah, I could feel it. I knew that I wouldn't have participated in some of the things that I was given an opportunity to participate in unless I had been in that environment.
Sure.
So went to college, moved to California. When I came back to Louisville, I knew that I wanted to stay involved somehow.
Okay.
My goal was, I thought, we've got to be able to provide this opportunity for as many young girls as possible. And so how do we do that? What's the barrier to that? It's funding. So I immediately got involved with the advancement committee at Assumption. The goal there is very similar to the Catholic Education Foundation. We need to provide funding for as many people as possible to be able to participate in that opportunity and be a part of that culture and what it provides. So since then, I've stayed involved. I've been on the board, I think 7.5 years now. Very involved in the development, continue to be, because that's so important. Assumption is thriving. They're still the largest all-girls Catholic high school in the city. I think this past school year, we funded close to $1.8 million for tuition assistance. That's over 40% of the student body there that's receiving aid. So if you think about it, that's nearly half the school that wouldn't maybe be able to attend Assumption if it weren't for the fundraising that's going on there, or the generosity of our donors. So we've really made a lot of headway there.
We know all about that at the Catholic Education Foundation. Rich, what are the enrollment numbers at Assumption? It sounds like Assumption's just booming, right?
It really is. They went through, and I think you were part of that capital campaign that was very successful a few years ago that enabled them to expand the campus. If you haven't been over there, check it out. It's way different than it used to be in terms of classroom expansion, beautiful new chapel, new cafeteria, new. I mean, it's really, really impressive, and all due credit to the board, Mary Lang, Martha Tedesco, the whole team over there. It's a different kind of school than it used to be in a much better way.
Yeah.
And the numbers show it. I mean, this past fall, the enrollment was 930, which is, I think the building can hold maybe 960.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So it's busting. And you're right, it's the largest all-girls school in the state. And the product continues to improve. Or the academic programs are excellent. You can speak to that better than I. But Mary Lang, who's I think in her 10th or 11th year as the president, has really changed the dynamic of Assumption High School for the better. And I couldn't be more proud of her.
They got a decent volleyball team there too.
I think we won three state championships this past fall. So
it's not just volleyball.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good point. So Dan, tell us about your college experience.
Sure. So I graduated from Assumption, spent a year at Bellarmine. Actually played golf for Bellarmine's golf team.
All right.
And then, my parents were very, very dedicated to providing a good foundation of Catholic grade school and high school, and we were kind of on our own for college. So unfortunately, I couldn't continue my education at Bellarmine after freshman year. It was a little out of my price range, so I transferred to UK.
Okay.
After that, graduated from Kentucky, but still had a great, college experience.
With so many siblings, was it a struggle for your family to attain a Catholic education for you, for so many of you?
I'm sure it was, but my parents never acted like it was.
Yeah.
It was just part of it.
Right.
They and I think about now with one child, the cost. I think about having 7 to put through, but it was never even an option. It was just that's what we did.
That's what you did.
Yeah.
And Rich, we hear that so often on this show when we talk about that. We talk about people from big families. You're part of a big family. Mm-hmm. People just figured it out. They sacrificed. It's kind of a little bit of a different generation now. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people that could maybe afford Catholic education, but decide they want to go on this vacation or buy a boat or whatever it may be. But I tell you what, it's not so much it's an investment. And that's what you always say, right, Rich? It's an investment.
Yeah, and I think like Diane's parents, mine, I'm one of 9, made that same investment and that same sacrifice in their kids. And quite honestly, it's the best thing they ever did for us, period. Yeah. And I would also say that recently, and I would say since I've been at the foundation, I've kind of noticed this. I think more and more people are sort of rediscovering Catholic education and its value, and maybe during the 80s and 90s or whatever, there was sort of this drift where it's, it was, I don't want to say it was taken for granted, but people just assumed that it was always going to be great.
Yep.
And I think now, maybe it's part of the COVID thing, I'm not sure, but I think young families today are really checking out and diving into, why should I do this? Is this the right thing for our family? And look, our enrollment numbers are up across the diocese 4 years in a row. So the numbers are showing sort of a rediscovery of this incredible asset.
So, Diane, let's talk about your business career. How'd you get started there?
Sure. So, one of the things we've talked about is the good that the Catholic education does, not only for the students, but for our community. And I really got connected right out of college through some of the connections that I had developed through my Catholic education. So I started working for a local venture capital-backed startup company.
Okay.
Worked for that company for a couple years. They went out of business, unfortunately. So then I went to work for another company backed by that same venture capital firm. Moved to California in the interim. That company did very well, got sold. And at 27, I found myself out of a job twice for these 2 different startup companies. So, but really good experience. And I realized I better go to work for a company that's going to be around for a while. So I went to work for GE.
Oh, there you go.
One of the largest companies in the world at the time.
That'll do it.
And, ended up for the next 20 years working for corporate America in various facets, primarily around enterprise software.
Got it.
Worked for Broadcom for a lot of years, and then ended my corporate career with Salesforce. I was with them for about 7 years.
Awesome.
A couple of years ago, I was approached by a local business owner and was given a great opportunity to work for a Louisville-based business.
Okay.
So about 2 years ago, I went to work for a company called Wasteology, which is based here in St. Matthews in Louisville, Kentucky. Women-founded, women-owned, and women-run, which is awesome. We are a provider of waste and recycling services for commercial businesses all across the country and Canada. Growing like crazy. We're up to 100 employees now.
Wow.
And we really help companies devise strategies to support their sustainability efforts too.
Cool.
So it's a meaningful role. I'm thrilled to be a part of the company.
Awesome. All right. So when you first got started in your career, did you realize the impact of your Catholic education?
I think I did. And as I mentioned earlier, I realized it in high school.
So you knew it early.
I do, but I was the youngest of 7, so I was around. I watched all my brothers and sisters go through their careers, so I might have had a little different perspective than most. But I did realize it, and I knew what a gift it was. In the early stages, like I said, the networking was really an important part of that. As I moved into the more corporate world and worked for international companies, it wasn't as much that, but it was the values, the work ethic, the commitment to success, all of those things that were taught in Catholic schools and in my home, but really echoed in this Catholic school environment. Things as basic as just showing up and exceeding expectations and being respectful to people and, driving toward your goals. All of those things that are beyond just the curriculum that Catholic schools support are so very important, and definitely have benefited me in my career.
So, Rich, obviously Diane plays a vital role at the foundation. Talk about that a little bit for us.
Well, she's our corporate secretary, our board secretary, if you will. So she's in our executive committee of the board. There's 7 of us, and that's a very important group for us. And equally important, she chairs our development committee. We're a lot of things at the foundation, but our most important thing is fundraising, right? Yep. If we don't have the funding for these kids, there's no mission.
Right.
So, under her leadership, we've got 3 major events. We've got our dinner event we have in March, which is our biggest. Our luncheon event for the St Trinity game in September. We've got our bourbon raffle. Our 4th one's coming up in February. And then we have our general community-wide fundraising from individuals and corporations here in the community. And look, under her leadership, just look at the numbers. I mean, we've set records every single year for every single one of those line items. So that's really attributable to her leadership, our team, our board support, our community support. But again, people are starting to really better understand what we're all about.
Right.
And why it's important for a kid to attend a Catholic school who can't afford to do so. And that message is really, I think, more resounding than ever. In addition, she helps us with all of our marketing, such as these kinds of productions.
Right.
And the other kind of communications we do in various forms across the community, which is much more expanded, quite honestly, thanks to you as well, than it ever has been before. So we're trying to, as best we can, get the message out about who we are. And look, we're an organization that not only raises money, but we invite people in need to join us. There's not that many nonprofits that are going to stand up and say, look, if you want what we got, you can have it.
Yeah.
Most people say, we're either run out of money, or it's too late, you missed the deadline, all that other kind of stuff. The window never closes at the foundation, so it's incumbent on us to make sure we can meet those financial obligations every year. And here's the best tribute to the board and to Diane for the last 10 years in a row. Every single student that qualified for an award got one. Every single student. We didn't turn anybody away. So that to me is just an incredible tribute to our team, to Diane, to the board, and then the direction of this organization.
Amen. Listen, Diane, I mean, being a board member, volunteer board member, it's a lot of pressure, right? Obviously, he mentioned board secretary, chair of the marketing and development committee. What are some of the challenges you faced there?
Well, I appreciate Rich giving me this credit, but really the credit goes to Rich and his team. I mean, they do a fantastic job with the resources that they have of engaging our donors and communicating the message and the mission of this organization. The challenges that we have are very simple. It's like I said earlier about assumption. We've got to raise as much money as possible to give these kids an opportunity to attend Catholic school. It's just that easy. The challenge, though, is that the work is never done, right?
Yeah,
so
ever.
We can go raise $1 million. That's awesome. Hey, guess what? We need $1 million more.
Yeah.
So it's constantly, it's that constant need. But also, we're meeting the needs of, this year it was around 3,700 students. We want it to be 4,000, and then we want it to be 5,000. And
right.
So we're never raising enough money to support the demand, because that demand keeps growing and the cost of education keeps growing. But really that demand keeps growing, and that's our goal, is to continue to support that. So there's lots of ways we're doing that. As Rich said, we've expanded our marketing. We've added an additional fundraiser through the bourbon raffle. We're also really trying to target increasing our donor pool. So our donor pool, quite candidly, is aging.
Sure.
So we need to get younger people in the habit of donating and recognizing the value of a Catholic education, and again, what it does for these families, but what it does for our community. I mean, a significant number of our community leaders and stewards are Catholic school graduates,
right?
You know, so there is we always talk about Louisville being a very compassionate city. I really credit much of that to the fact that we have so many leaders of organizations that are Catholic school graduates, and that stewardship component is ingrained in those kids from all of us from kindergarten on, which is so important in a community.
I'd like to get your thoughts on this real quick. So obviously you're deeply involved in the Catholic Education Foundation, who helps kids kind of grade school below, right? So you're kindergarten through 8th grade, but then you get into high school, and obviously you've been involved at Assumption, and that's a whole nother thing. You know, how do we bridge that gap between the kids that have gone to the Catholic grade schools that would love to go to a Catholic high school, but can't make that jump because of the difference in tuition? How do we bridge that gap?
You know, that's a great question, and I wish I had the answer. And this is something that our board and Rich and his team talk about regularly, is we've got to get there.
Yeah.
I mean, the answer is we've got to figure it out. We don't know today, but, you know, a lot of it is expanding our donor base. It's setting some really lofty goals and reaching those from how we fundraise. You know, I don't know, Rich, if you want to comment on that. You're much more expertise.
Yeah, we're actually going through an exercise that's sort of in progress now to understand what happens to our 8th grade students we support.
Right.
Where do they go from here, right? And we do some high school funding. I think last year we distributed $650,000 to 9 high schools, and they divvy that out as they see fit.
Okay.
So we're in the game, just not enough. And so we looked at our top 200 neediest 8th graders last year. And the one thing that stuck out is that 50 of them, 25% of those kids, did not sit for the placement test. So they didn't even bother to try. So you stopped in December of your 8th grade year, and that was, you went somewhere else, okay?
Yeah.
So and we're trying to dig more into that data as to why that is. I mean, there was 50 kids who we supported for as many as 9 years in a Catholic school that sort of went away.
Right.
And I think therein lies sort of the issue, and I think therein lies the solution, because we got to figure out, basically those families feel like, again, because of the higher cost of going to high school,
right,
there's just no way to swing this. In many cases, those families, as you would guess, those families are living in South Louisville, Shively, Valley Station, PRP, or Coit Park, Butyl. I mean, it's sort of obvious, if you will, from an economic perspective. So the question is, how do we address those families and their needs if they want their child to continue to go to Catholic school? So I think we're on the cusp of coming up with something that's meaningful for those kids. And again, we're early stages. I don't think we'll be in a position to do something in the fall of 25, but I would say by the fall of 26, we're going to do something.
I love it. I love it. And thank you both for the answers of that. I mean, I know that's not an easy question to answer, but certainly something I think we need to be addressing. So, Diane, what are some other causes and organizations that have benefited from your talents?
Well, thank you for asking the question that way. That's complimentary. I have worked with the Catholic Education Foundation for a while, with Assumption. I also have been pretty involved with the Little Sisters of the Poor and St. John's Home for the Aged, which if the listeners don't know that cause, it's fantastic. They care for the indigent elderly who really have nowhere else to go with end of life. And so it's a beautiful mission and just a wonderful place and a wonderful order of sisters. So we care about them a lot and help them. And my son and I volunteer at St. Vincent de Paul in the Open Hand Kitchen and also at Ronald McDonald House.
Okay, cool.
So we try to do things beyond a lot with our time.
Yeah.
I really feel like that's important.
Yeah. All great stuff. All very worthy causes there, too.
Well, Teague, a lot of people don't really understand the Little Sisters. I mean, that is literally a hand-to-mouth organization.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so if you're admitted to their facility here in Louisville, you're basically indigent. You don't have any assets to speak of, okay? And you really can't afford to pay little, if any. So the sisters in that organization have to fund that operation themselves. So literally, You know the history of this, Diane. The sisters would go out in the community and beg, literally.
Literally beg.
Oh, yeah.
That's
for over 100 years.
They still do. I mean, there is a begging sister. And she goes out to businesses and asks for, we needed more meat every month. Can you give us more meat? And then you've got people like Houchin's grocery store that donate a ton to them. So it's really a lot of in-kind donations.
Okay.
And just to give you some context here, it takes about $5 million a year to run that facility over behind Audubon. St. John's Hope for the Aged, and we get about $2.5 million in funding through Medicare, Medicaid. So we have to raise $2.5 million a year to keep that operation going.
Yeah,
which people don't realize. Like Rich said, it really is going out and asking, "Can you help us?"
Interesting.
But it's such an important
we might
mission.
ask some of the sisters to come over to our place to help us.
I tell you what, man,
it's hard to say no.
I guess so.
It's a lot easier to say no to Rich than it is.
Heck yeah, it is. All right, so Rich, I know that the tuition system process for next fall is already underway. What are some of the goals for the year ahead?
Yeah, look, we helped a record number, as Diane said, 3,750 kids last fall. $8.3 million in funding, another record. We'd like to jump it up to 4,000 this fall. I don't know how that's going to fall out. I think we were up about 100 kids last year. It's early in the game, but we're processing the first round now, and it looks like the numbers are higher for next fall. But think about it this way: the average award for each student is around $2,000. So if you want to add 100 kids year over year, that's $200,000 you have to raise in addition to that $8.3 million base. And Diane's right about the other thing on funding kids. Inflation's a big deal, okay? As tuition rates rise, and you're talking about a group of families that can't afford to pay the base rate, let alone the higher rate. Somebody's got to fund that increment that goes up every year. And that becomes a super big challenge in fundraising at Assumption, at St. X, at Trinity, at CEF, anywhere, because that's, your costs are going to go up.
Sure.
I mean, salaries are going to go up, benefits are going to go up.
Everything's going to go right.
And we have to figure out a way to stay up with inflation as well as try to bring in new families.
Right.
So it's a challenge. I think we're shooting for at least 100 more kids, and probably about 8.7 million in funding next fall is what we're shooting for, both of which would be records.
All right, now I kind of laid this out earlier, and this is a question for both of you. But obviously we have listeners all over the country, even all over the world here a little bit. The foundation is kind of a model for a lot of the Catholic education foundations around the world. And what we do here is we're trend setting. What's next? Obviously, the foundation exploded over the last 10 years. Now, a question for both of you guys. Where do we go from here?
You want to go first?
Sure. My vision, and I think this falls in line with what Rich and team are doing, is we have to continue to expand that donor base. And this means in lots of ways. So it's more people, it's different age groups. And the way that we do that is to make sure that people are engaged and that people understand the impact of what a Catholic education can do.
Sure.
So this impacts these families, it impacts the individuals, but it also is so good for our community. And I think that's the part sometimes people are not recognizing, is the long-term impact that these students have when they come out of Catholic schools with that strong foundation. It's an awesome thing for our city, and we need to continue to tie that donor base and those people funding this to the outcome of that mission.
Great answer.
Well, I think it's spot on. I think, look, and this is a 200-year-old thing, right? But Catholic schools are a big part of the fabric of this community. They are, and they're going to continue to be. But it's incumbent on us to think about, well, what's that look like 20 years from now? What's that look like? Does it look the same as it does today? Probably not. So what we're doing at the foundation is we have to bolster our finances. Okay, we not only have to keep raising large sums of money at events and across the community, but we also need to build our balance sheet up. We have a permanent endowment that today is over $40 million. We have a pathway to $50 million from some pledges that haven't yet been funded. And ultimately, we need to get that within probably the next 5 to 10 years to $100 million. Mm-hmm. And why is that important? That asset can sustain this organization in perpetuity. Nice. If we reach $100 million in endowed funds and we can draw 4 or 5% a year from that, that has tremendous impact on families across the community. Remember, today we're supporting 3,750 students. That's 2,100 families. Mm-hmm. Think about that, 2,100 families. We need to broaden that impact to a point at which 20 years from now, who knows, there's some neighborhoods in this community where there are no Catholic schools. Germantown's a good example. Germantown's reinvented itself over the last probably 15 years to where now there's a lot of young families living in Germantown, raising their kids. We would think maybe 10 or 20 years from now, well, maybe that community needs a Catholic school.
Sure.
So that's not our decision to make per se at the foundation, but I think if we have the asset base and the funding to support a school in Germantown, at least we would be that further along in the discussion about, do we need to expand the Catholic school experience?
Yeah.
And I feel like I want to add something to what Rick said or what we talked about earlier when it comes to expanding our donor base. You know, when we talk about what the education is doing as a whole, or the foundation is doing as a whole, these are big numbers we're talking about. We're talking tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions. I just want to make it clear when we talk about the giving pyramid and the donor pyramid, you have a lot of people at the top who are giving big numbers and then a huge number at the bottom that are giving $100 or, $1,500 or $10 a month.
Sure.
Those are just as much appreciated. So I don't want us to continue to talk about these big donations and what we have to go through and the $100 million. We get to that $100 million with all kinds of donors. So I do think it's important that when we talk about expanding our donor base, it's at all levels, and we're greatly appreciative to anybody who can give at whatever level they are able to give at.
That's reoccurring gifts.
Well, it's spot on, because we have today, I think we have 1,200 donors that give to this organization. That's actually less than it was 5 years ago. That's kind of a national trend for a lot of different reasons. But Diane's right. We got to go to a couple thousand. We got to go to 2,500. And most of that's going to be at that level of between $100 and $1,000.
Sure.
And that is actually our future. That's our future. Mm-hmm. So when you look out 20 years from now, if somebody will start with you today at the age of 35 for $100, over time, that could grow to a much larger
Absolutely.
Donor. But if we don't start them at 35 years old, we can't develop that relationship. So that's the Diane's spot on. The overarching plan for this foundation is the garnering relationships with younger donors. We have to do it.
And we don't want people to be deterred because we keep talking about these big numbers. I mean, that is just as important, if not more, to the future of the organization.
Very much so.
Putting on a masterclass here for fundraising for foundations. I hope people are listening. Rich, following a very successful business career in healthcare finance, you sort of kicked off Act 2, right? Here at the foundation. And now, 10 years in, what you have learned about yourself in this community is what?
Oh, lots. When I first came to the foundation, I didn't really know what I was doing, to be honest with you. I didn't have a grand plan per se, other than to grow its impact. But what I did learn, and I worked for a lot of large organizations, very large companies, Humana, HCA, Kindred for 35 years. And when you're in a large organization, you get things done a certain way. There's a certain protocol and process to getting things done. Well, you go to a small organization. We were 5 people at the time, okay? You got to do everything, okay? And when the computer breaks, the IT department's not going to show up, okay? And so it's sort of gaining a sense of how much you can actually do yourself, how much one person can actually do and produce. That's something I learned very quickly, because I'm thinking, wow, we need to hire a lot more people here. Well, wait a minute, before we go off and do that, how can we become more productive? And I would tell you, whether you ask Julie or anybody on the team today, we're a lot more productive. We got a fantastic team, and people understand within the organization, I have to do more. Not we have to do more. I have to do more. I think that's the best lesson I learned.
So, Diane, you got a ways to go here, but do you ever think about Act 2 for yourself?
For sure. And I appreciate you saying I have a ways to go. Not quite as long as I'd like for it to be, but no, I'm kidding. I'm thrilled with where I am now. And to Rich's comment just a few minutes ago, I've worked for a lot of large organizations as well, and then came to Wasteology Pathfinder about 2 years ago, simply because the most important thing to me in my career is making an impact. Actually, in my life, is making an impact. So what impact am I making in my career, in the community, with my family, et cetera? I always want to feel like I'm doing that. And I really took this role with Wasteology Pathfinder because I felt like I could have an impact to the business and, as a leader in that organization. And I work for the founder, who's Stacey Harrelson, who's a CEF donor as well, which we're grateful for.
Amen.
She's she's been a really strong leader, and I've learned a lot from her. And hopefully I'm making an impact in that organization. So I'm going to do that for as long as I'm valuable to that organization. And then I know that I will end up somewhere closer to the nonprofit world.
Sure.
I don't know what that'll be yet. Maybe I could be,
we'll
as
find
good
her
as Rich looked like.
Don't worry, we'll find her something.
But anyway, that, so I do think about that a lot. And, I'll end up somewhere here in this city, hopefully making an even bigger impact.
I love it. The city needs you. So amidst all your activity in life, you also have an awesome family. We haven't really talked about that yet. Tell us about your son.
Oh, my favorite topic. I have an 11-year-old. He just turned 11. His name's Gus. He's named after my dad, who passed away when I was a little girl, and just a joy to have in my life. He is fifth grade at Sacred Heart Model School.
Nice.
Which, I'm really learning firsthand. So it's been over 30 years since I graduated from St Rita. Been involved in the Catholic Education Foundation for the last 10 years or so. Now I'm really getting to see in my own home the value of a Catholic education personally. So we've had a wonderful experience at Sacred Heart Model School. It's the International Baccalaureate curriculum.
Yeah, it's a pretty incredible school.
It's very challenging. It's a good fit for him. The teachers and the staff are amazing. He's got an opportunity to do so much. And I really do think across all the 39 Catholic grade schools, that opportunity to be engaged in lots of different ways is so important. Robotics, the School for the Arts, all the athletic programs that are offered. There's chess club. It's so different from when I was in grade school. That no matter what your passion is or what your talent is, the school is going to figure that out and nurture it. Yeah. And he's definitely fallen in line with that at the model school, which is awesome.
And I think that's kind of the common theme with a lot of the Catholic schools. That's just it. There's so much community. There's so much you can do, so many ways to get involved. That's what makes it so special.
And I'm so grateful for, we kind of touched on this earlier, but you try to be a good parent and teach your children values and all of that. Well, you only have them for a limited amount of time every day. So when you're sending your child somewhere for, let's say, 7 hours a day, you really want that value system that you care about to be echoed in that environment. So it kind of makes parenting a little easier, I'll be honest, if you've got somebody else on, 7 hours a day telling them that to be respectful or, talking about service to others. And it's just, it's more than just the curriculum. It's the value system and the character that's developed.
Well, that's pretty powerful right there.
No, listen, it's so true. And this has been going on for a long, generations, that Catholic schools really were built upon the family, and they were built as an extension of the family, not as sort of this standalone enterprise where you can get a great education. We'll, teach you how to read, write, and do arithmetic. And the foundation that experience builds right into the family. So not only the student benefits, the family benefits from the experience. And that's what makes it unique. That's what makes us different. It really does.
Diane, you're such a great example of what it means to give back to your church, your school's community, your school, all the results of your family, your Catholic faith, your Catholic education. May God bless you and your family and for all your great works. And Rich, at every Catholic school family, now in need knows at the Catholic Education Foundation?
The answer is yes.
Thank you once again for listening to the Catholic Education Foundation podcast. Please hit that subscribe button. Give us a nice review, a nice rating. We'll see if we can't set some more records in 2025.
Thank you, Diane.